Hey guys, a real quick announcement before we start the show. It's nothing bad, don't worry. If you didn't notice, we had announced on certain social media the other day that we had been selected to podcast live from Podcastpalooza, which is a new event that was taking place at Silicon Valley Comicon. Now, we've gone to Silicon Valley Comicon as press every year since it's opened. And we thought it was really cool that they're going to do something so focused on podcasting. Well, they sent us some type of questionnaire, and unbeknownst to us, it entered us into this drawing of people who would podcast live. Again, we go every year. I wanted to go and have fun. Really didn't want it to turn into work. We didn't hear anything for a couple weeks, so we didn't think anything of it. About 3 weeks before this event to take place, they contacted us and told us that we had been selected. Cool, we're going to podcast live from Comic-Con. I could set up my shit, Skype with Mike, we can BS and have a good time. It was really not a big deal. I think it was 4 days before the event was supposed to take place. They told me that I was not allowed to use Skype to talk to Mike during this live podcast. And I told them I would need to, because that's the format of our show, and all I'd have to do is hook it up to their PA. And they informed me that I'd be going up by myself, that there would not be a panel with the other podcasts that were selected, that they were going to run this podcast by podcast like some sort of fucking comedy show. So I would have to do this by myself for 45 minutes. I'm not a comedian. I don't fancy myself a comedian. I don't know how to write a joke. They told me to get a co-host, which I thought was a really big compromise for trying to represent the Whatcast in such a large venue. But we didn't want to miss up the opportunity, so we got our buddy JG, who said he'd do it. And when I asked them how we were going to get him in, because I have my press pass, they said it wasn't their problem and they're not going to get him a pass or anything like that. Really turned us off from doing it altogether. So after compromising of not doing the show with Mike, and then not even attempting to get the co-host they demanded we get into the building to do this Podcastpalooza, we have decided to not partake in this Podcastpalooza. It sucks. I know we just announced it, but it was just too much of a misrepresentation of what we are. We're not going to be a part of that. We're sorry, you guys. The episode that you're going to hear was going to be the podcast announcement of that. So since we're not going to be taking part in that Podcastpalooza anymore, what I've done is I've chopped out most of that talk what I could. And when we announced that, we ended up talking about comic books for half an hour like we always do. So what I've done is I left that in, but I've thrown it at the end. So the show's going to start with us discussing the crimes and life of Dr. H.H. Holmes. And then it's going to go right into the comic book talk, just in case there's some of you guys who like that shit. So it's a real Christopher Nolan episode. Once again, sorry to jump in. Sorry if one or two of you were looking to go to that Podcastpalooza. I'm still going to be walking around. If you see a giant guy with a beard, just I guess take a chance and yell Mateo, and I'll give you a high five and a Whatcast sticker or something like that. Sorry again, you guys. Sorry the show's late. No, but let's talk about Myrtle
Castles. We're going to Myrtle Beach. Have Myrtle Castle.
But on to more grim discussion.
Yeah, sorry for all you guys that don't give a shit about comic books and don't give a shit. Hopefully there was enough shark fuck talk to tide you over until we got to the subject of the show, because we rambled for like a half hour.
But onward and upward, let's talk about murder castles.
Murder castles.
So when you say murder castle, I only think of one specific fella. When that
Count Dracula.
No, I don't know, maybe feeding castle, murder castle, not so much with Dracula.
Well, what do you think he does with them after he eats them? He doesn't turn them all into goddamn vampires.
No, he gives them to the chicks and they become zombie-like sex slaves, like those conjoined chicks, you know? Maybe they're not, they become undead feeding vessels.
Yeah, but they're dead. They're murdered.
In the inside, they're dead.
They're just reanimated corpses. They're fucking dead. They got murdered by vampire. Dun.
The person I referenced, though, is known as America's first serial killer, which is probably not true. His name was H.H. Holmes.
It's time to play the game. It's Triple H. Triple H, ladies and gentlemen, the cerebral assassin, also had murder castles.
The more astute will know him as Herman Webster Mudgett. Now, if you've heard about...
Or Hunter Hearst Helmsley.
or Hunter Hearst Helmsley the First. But you guys may have heard of him, and he's obviously famous for his construction of what me and Mike lovingly refer to as the Murder Castle, which we'll get into in a little bit. But just to cover something different and get into spooky stuff as October approaches quickly, we're going to talk about this guy. He was born May 16th in 1861 in the good old town of Glilmatin, New Hampshire. But with all serial killers, the question of how does one get to the point of being a serial killer? What starts that? And for every human shitbag that kills people has a specific event or point in time that plants the serial killer seed. They're all different, which makes learning the life patterns that blossom that seed difficult to learn and trace. But for HH, we'll call him. No, that's not a good one. That's like a.
No, he's Triple H.
Yeah, well,
he's Triple H.
Okay. So for Triple H, it was when he was 13 years old. And it was well known that he feared hospitals and doctors. It was a different time back then, and there's rumors of unkept doctors' offices with jars of body parts and severed limbs all over the place, which is kind of believable for the time. This is the 1860s, but one day he was grabbed by two bullies, and they drug him to a local physician's office, and there they showed him a human skull that was kind of on display. Not really, it was inside. They drug him in there. But instead of being terrified by the sight of this human skull, he became fascinated. And he was so fascinated with the skull that he would set out to become a physician in hopes of being able to one day admire body parts firsthand. But at 16, he fell in love with a girl named Clara Lovering. They married a year later, and 9 months after that, good old Triple H was a daddy. And this spurred him to focus on an actual career, which returned his mind to his true passion, medical science. So he quit his job to take on an apprenticeship at the very same doctor's office he saw the skull at 6 years before. And while he was doing this apprenticeship, not earning any money, his wife and the baby went back to live with her parents. And after a year of this apprenticeship, he enrolled in a medical school in Vermont and left his wife and kid behind. And while he was in Vermont, he lived as a single man. He started humping everybody he could, including the landlord's daughter. And that kind of pissed off the landlords. One day they smelled a weird odor coming from his room. And since they didn't like the guy, they decided to go and search it. And the landlady found the body of a decomposing baby under his bed.
Oh, man, that is fucking creepy.
Yeah, no matter what time period this is in, can you imagine like having a boarding house and finding that?
No.
Well, he had a good explanation. Him being in the medical field, he had brought home his homework, which was to dissect a baby at home.
It's just one of those at-home kits, just at-home baby dissection.
Yeah, this isn't a real
Every
baby.
school has them.
Oh. Well, they gave him a warning and told him, don't bring any more fucking dead babies in here, which is insane in itself.
We've got a strict no dead baby policy. You must adhere to that if you're going to be living here.
This is strike one. You're out on strike two when it comes to the dead babies.
No, strike one was banging his daughter. Now he's on strike two. Like he's, bring it down a notch, guy.
In 1882, he moved to Michigan, this time taking his wife and son, but she didn't stay too long. Their relationship fell apart and she moved back with her parents shortly after. And this marked the end of their relationship, but they never really got divorced. And he went to Michigan to go to medical school. And when he was at this school, it said that this was the first time he thought about using the corpses from medical school to fake deaths for insurance money purposes. So he's always been a little bit of a scammer. And it was around this time that one of the ladies he was humping, he had actually promised to marry her. One day she found a letter from his wife, and she went straight to the school's higher ups. And apparently back in the day, you can complain to who, I guess somebody's employer. And officially it's called a breach of promise. And she felt betrayed because she couldn't get married to him because he was already married. And the school took it serious enough that they held a hearing on this matter. And he basically told them, I never fucking promised to marry her. She's overzealous. And I'm going to tell her to kick it to the curb. And they believed him. He was cleared of any wrongdoing, and he was able to resume going to school there, and he had no more further contact with her. So this is his demeanor. And on a side note, when he graduated, he walked right up to the teacher who held the hearing, who was the head of the hearing, and said, oh, by the way, all that shit that chick said about me was totally fucking true. Fuck you. But this was after he got his diploma. In 1884, he graduated and told that dude to fuck off, but he moved back home to New Hampshire. And there he quickly fucked up his reputation by becoming a womanizer and basically wouldn't pay for anything. He wouldn't pay any debts. He would order shit from people who sold shit and sell it for cash and just not pay them. And that got him in a lot of trouble, so much so that he was actually ran out of town and had to flee his home. And in 1886, he finally reaches Chicago. But on the way there, he met and married a young lady whose family was mega rich. And he used her money to buy a big old plot of land. After being there for a while, he bought a pharmacy. And again, he wouldn't pay his bills. And anytime any bill collectors or people, he'd be sued by anybody, he was so tricky that he had put this pharmacy and this plot of land that he bought in his wife's mother's name. So whenever they would come, he would just be like, I don't fucking own the place. Go talk to her mom. And they're like, well, where's her mom? And he would say, I don't fucking know. So he would just go send them on these wild goose chases looking for somebody that they basically couldn't find. There was even a story to where he bought a really big safe. Basically, they delivered it before he paid for it. It's just the way it worked out. And he didn't pay for it, so they sent the repo people. And he pretended not to be home, so they didn't break in or anything like that. But as soon as they left, he had them build walls around this safe. And when the repo men came back, they told them they were there for the safe. And he told them, you can go ahead and get the safe. But if you damage anything in my house, any of these walls, I'll fucking sue you. So they literally just ended up having to leave the safe. He soon got the idea to build this 2-story castle that you referenced earlier. So he sold this pharmacy to pay for the construction of this castle. But again, he would get in trouble for not paying for shit. I guess he weaseled his way out of months worth of labor by saying one beam on one part of a wall was too short. And he was able to convince courts and lawyers and shit like that this compromised the construction of the whole thing. So he didn't have to pay them for it, but he didn't tear it down and fix it either. He knew he was full of shit. So he would just not pay people for their shit. And this is when he started his first murders. Now, the first murder is apparently somebody who had invested in his businesses had sent an investigator over to where his new building was being built and was going to report back to this investor. And somebody saw this investor drop over after exiting a store. And apparently H.H. Holmes rushed to his aid and he poured some liquid down his throat. They said it was a black liquid. And he died shortly thereafter. And there was another employee of his that was working in his pharmacies. And he had many businesses at this point. And she and her husband disappeared. He ended up having an affair with this employee and she became pregnant. So the husband quit, got all pissed off. He made a glass company in order to have a massive furnace installed in this castle he was having built, although nobody saw him produce any glass or anything like that. But it was just another way to have more employees and to have this furnace put in. And after he gets this furnace in is pretty much when he starts his killing sprees. Tons of his lady employees would start to go missing. Young ladies would go missing. And we later learn why they call this the murder castle. He ended up setting fire to this castle after it was done being built, and he used it. The first floor was for shops. The second floor was for apartments. But this wasn't so. As you know, Mike, some of these rooms were built as gas chambers Some of these rooms had chutes that led to the furnace downstairs. It was just literally a Winchester mystery house of how to kill people in every single room. Now, we learned that a lot of this H.H. Holmes shit, basically, after rereading it, a lot of what we know about it is just early cases of sensationalism. What's the weirdest shit that you heard about what he had going on in this house, Mike?
That he had like all sorts of hidden doorways and passageways where people would try to escape and they would get lost, and he'd like stalk them through the hallways and then kill them and dump them down a chute into his basement.
Yeah, super Sweeney Todd-like. Even his employees would mention how creepy he was. He would be caught like snooping around this castle when he wasn't supposed to be there, or when he said he wasn't going to be there. One case he had one of the employees get into this giant safe that he had brought over to have them yell to see if they could be heard outside of the safe. And it was just weird behavior that anybody should have found peculiar. There's actually one woman he courted after everything was said and done. She had made the comment to somebody that she found it very peculiar, and she felt that he'd become a murderer in no time, that if he did, it wouldn't surprise him. But that's what he did. He killed a lot of these employees that he had, and he set fire to this castle and fled Chicago because there's too many eyes on him. He owed too many people too much money. So he moved around for a bit and ended up in Texas and actually started building a second murder castle. If you can believe that, Mike. Did you know about that?
I didn't. I only thought he had the one. So, color me impressed. I mean, most people only have the one murder castle. So he must have really been serious about his work to have two murder castles.
Yeah, it's almost impressive. I mean, we'll get into a little bit more about his thinking later, but to be able to pull that off and use it as an actual place to kill people and gas people, and there's acid baths, and there was fucking everything, meat hooks that they hung people on, all the crazy shit that, you can think of. They said, I mean, they're when they put out the fire and found all this shit there, they found a lot of this shit, so that shit's confirmed. But they never finished building the Texas murder castle. They ended up taking out a bunch of mortgages on the property and then left. He actually met up with some dude who was another swindler. He helped him out with the mortgage thing, and they tried to scam on a purchase of a pharmacy. At this point, one of the people had caught wind about how H.H. Holmes always fucking welched on people, and he called the authorities, and H.H. Holmes was actually arrested and put in jail for 3 days. Just, can you imagine being some type of fucking torture serial killer and then going to jail and then having them release you 3 days later?
Yeah, you're just like, ha, sucker.
I would have been like, oh shit. I would literally tiptoed out of that jail like a cartoon character.
Wringing your hands.
Yep. But this dude that he met up with, this swindler, and Triple H came up with this plan to fake his own death because this friend of his had a life insurance policy on him, and H.H. Holmes could probably easily get his hands on a corpse, and his friend backed out at the last minute, and this pissed off Triple H, so he ended up killing his friend, and he ended up trying to cash in his life insurance policy, and it works, but the payment went to this dude's wife who was in Indianapolis. So he traveled to Indianapolis to claim his half of his money. He wanted to get it all, but he ended up telling his wife that he actually ended up killing himself, and this cost him a lot more money with doctors and burial. So I think it was out of some like $10,000. She ended up handing over $7,000 so that he could pay for debt that he acquired back where they were and all that shit. But coincidentally, his wife was sending their 3 kids to her sister's house in another state, and Triple H, being so kind and generous and non-murderous, agreed to escort them along the way as he was headed in that direction. But at some point, he decided to kill all 3 children by poisoning them and gassing them. He eventually was arrested in Boston for stealing a fucking horse of all things. And while in custody in Boston, they were able to pretty much pin the murder of his friend on him. And while in custody, he confessed to killing 27 people in his murder castle. They were only able to pin 9 on him. So that's what the total tally they gave him. But he confessed to 27. And we talked about how this is all sensationalized. Maybe there wasn't acid baths. There's just well, now recently there's a lot of talk about how sensationalized this case is. And there's not a lot more, but this guy was just a bullshit artist. He was just out to swindle people money. I think he was married like 5 times and always used them for their money and racked up debt in their name, would put his businesses in their name and fuck up their credit and then bounce. So they're just really pointing to the direction of this guy just being a fucking swindler, some type of Black Widow type killer who's doing this for money. But there's so many things that point into a different direction. I mean, even when he was in medical school, they said all he did was dissect things. That's all he wanted to do was chop people's bodies up. When you read about shit like when he took his wife to Michigan and she bounced out, it wasn't because they fought a lot. It's because she kept showing up to social events with black eyes and eventually missing teeth. This guy was a brutal piece of shit. He wasn't just a swindler. I mean, there's one account to where when he was, I think, like 18 or something, there was this one chick that he liked, and he didn't tell her anything. You know, he just liked her from afar, and he saw some dude hit on her, and he instantly walked up to the dude and was like, "I'll fucking crack your fucking skull, and if you ever talk to her again." And literally grabbed the girl and walked off, and she loved it. You know, they ended up dating for a long time. There was the landlord's daughter who is banging. There was one of the tenants who reported it to the parents, the reason why they found out. And he fucking beat the shit out of this guy. I mean, he had no problem walking up to this guy and giving him 2 black eyes and fucking scarring up his face. So I don't think I buy so much of braggadocious swindler guy. And when he was in jail awaiting his execution, he actually wrote a diary. And he might not be America's first serial killer. He might be America's first documented serial killer. But it's very interesting to read. I suggest if you read it, because this guy just literally tells all. He answers all the questions you'd have for somebody like this. And to me, it's not bragging at all. He's just trying to answer questions on why he's this way. I mean, he has a famous quote to where he's always, when he was born, he said, he knew he had the devil in him. And that killing people was just inevitable for him, and that he couldn't help it just any more than a poet can help from singing a song. So it's interesting to see this new twist that they're putting on this guy and playing down, I don't know, the famous murder castle stories about acid baths, basically like a suburban Texas Chainsaw Massacre house.
I wish that was the case. I mean, I guess I probably shouldn't say I wish that was the case, because that makes me sound like I wish people were being murdered in a murder castle. I don't, but it's such a creepy story, and then to find out that it's, well, still the dude was a piece of shit and killed people, it's not as creepy of a story.
Yeah, I don't know. I think having some type of apartment complex that you would just take people to and conduct fucking autopsies on them.
He's not it seemed way creepier when it was just like when it was being portrayed as just all the hidden doors and hallways and things that locked behind people, and he's just tromping through like this mystery maze and stalking his victims the whole time. Like, that sounded way scarier. Like, I don't know why in my head I just pictured this dude with like a fucking butcher's apron or a fucking surgeon's apron, you know, one of those easily cleanable aprons, with a fucking axe, just stalking down this hallway while someone's scrambling to get through, and then a trap door falls out from underneath them, and then he comes in the side door and they're like, "Oh my god," and then chop chop chop, and then he throws them down the chute and away they go.
Yeah, there's, like I said, it's been sensationalized, but I mean, the World's Fair took place in Chicago, and he said that when that was coming, he ramped up and had a 3rd floor built for more apartments. And that's not what he had built. Yeah, I mean, there were parts of this building to where he could have very well roamed around free I don't know about chasing somebody, but going from room to room, doing what he wanted to do without any detection. And there, like you said, there was trapdoors that led down to the furnace room. So, I mean, when he confessed, he said, you're not going to find anybody. He got rid of them instantly. He just liked to dissect people and cut them out. He liked to take their entrails out, your normal psycho serial killer stuff. And that's one thing I read. It's not that I took offense to it. It's just I was kind of used to the marching. I've got the same picture in my head as you, marching around with a fucking big old pig splitter, butcher axe, and chasing some poor naked worker girl while she's covered in blood. That's how I knew H.H. Holmes. I just didn't know he was such a swindler, money grubbing guy. But when it comes to who he killed, he wasn't killing these worker girls for their money. That's not what he swindled for. After reading all that he went through and how many marriages and all just the bullshit he went through to get to where he was, I mean, shit. This is a person who at 13, that was his breaking point. He became obsessed with the skeletons, with human remains, which is a common thing when it comes to serial killers. There's tons of them that took heads home and all that shit. That's not uncommon. But what's uncommon is that, within 10 years, he was working at that place. This is a guy who swindled his way through medical school to pay for medical school so he can cut up bodies freely and legally to where it wouldn't be out of place. That's what he wanted to do. He didn't want to learn medicine to heal people. He wanted to do autopsies. And that's kind of weird to think about. This guy knew what he wanted to do when he was 13 and made it fucking happen. And then he got greedy and made a place.
A lot of the serial killers, don't they typically display those sort of behaviors when they're teenagers?
Most definitely. But almost none of them will go to a school to where they can learn forensic science or become some type of professional at something that can help hide their crimes, or at least practice a part of what their thing is. It's weird. This guy set the wheels in motion to do what he wanted to do as far as killing people when he was 13 years old. I don't think there's too many serial killers who started planning for their activities for when they were 25, when they were 13. I think they just displayed the tendencies, and most of them are fucking dummies. But this guy was like, I want to cut up bodies, so I'm going to actually go to medical school so I can do this. And then acquire enough money to build a place where I can do it freely.
I think the making the money to do it freely is the most impressive aspect.
Yeah, I mean, he knew he was wanted when he kidnapped this lady's kids, when he took them to escort them. He'd gotten word that he was wanted at this time. He owed too many people money, and that's dangerous. I mean, he must have known that he was eventually going to become wanted, but he still went to other places and bought a fucking pharmacy. He went to other places and bought more property. He was still working for his end goal. After things got too hot in Chicago and he burnt down his place, he went somewhere else to continue. I mean, this is an ambitious dude to do something so despicable just to be able to kill people.
He's like, you know what? That first time didn't work, but this time I'm going to make it work.
Yeah, we hear about guys who have their dungeons and it's a fucking hollowed out camper shell or something like that. Imagine them finding some guy's house and he's got a fucking Costco underground. He's got a place that big. And that must have cost millions of dollars. And back in the day, this probably cost H.H. Holmes millions of dollars to have this place custom built like that. And granted, he didn't pay for most of it, like we talked about. But Jesus, you don't hear about Ted Bundy's diary when he was, 8 stabbing cats saying, you know what, I'm going to grow up and kill people and I'm going to stay out of trouble. I'm going to not do drugs. I'm going to grow up to be in politics. So I'm looked at as a pillar of the community and a stellar example of a member of society and all that shit. It's just very rare you see somebody go through something at 13 and start then, right then and there, I'm going to make it to where I can kill people. Very old case of a serial killer, but still interesting. Somebody who made up their mind that they were going to do that and stopped at nothing, not just to kill people. It's not like it was like some feral rage. Like he had to go drive around in some fucking shitty beat up Oldsmobile and pick up hookers and get drunk and then choke them to death. He was like, nope, I'm going to be cool. I'm going to make money. I'm going to fucking make tons of businesses so I can have in and out employees and nobody will miss them. And I mean, he was able to kill supposedly 27 people before it got so noticeable he had to cut out.
So how come they could only pin 9 on him if he admitted to 27?
Because
why weren't they able to pin more?
They went to the furnace.
But there's nothing, like no evidence whatsoever. Did they just leave him as missing persons? They
just left him as just what he claimed. They were able to find enough to get him with 9. But he was, they say that the stories of acid baths that's part of the sensationalism. Maybe not. Maybe that's why they didn't find anything on the others. I mean, the shit that I found sensationalized, like I watched a pretty good documentary video on it, and they gave a good example of how his dad was an abusive alcoholic who would chloroform his kids when they would cry too much and fucking talk shit to them and beat their asses. And that even from H.H. Holmes' mouth, that wasn't true at all. But that's what was reported. That's what was in the papers. He said his parents were totally fine and totally cool. Prosperous business they had, and there was nothing like that contributed to this. It was just maybe that's why we keep stuff like that from young children. He saw this skull and awoke something so deep that he started planning from that point forward. I mean, I think
maybe I've got a different idea. Maybe he saw that skull and the skull was possessed by an evil spirit, and he saw that, and then when he saw the skull, it knew that he was like some kid that was getting bullied and was a pussy and he was afraid of doctors, and it's like, you know what, I can take this kid and I can mold him. And it got inside, and it's like, you know what, you're going to become a doctor. You're going to become the scariest doctor that ever doctored, and you're going to fucking cut people up and build murder castles, and it's going to be glorious. And
very well could be, dude.
It's the demon of Triple H, and now he resides in WWE.
Yeah.
Ready to take on whoever is next to fight him. He doesn't fight anymore, but sometimes he does. But that's neither here nor there. It's Triple H, goddammit, and he'll smash you in the head with a fucking sledgehammer.
I'm sure. That's like what Alex Jones says, right? The elite have all their own secret clubs. I'm sure they all just took H. Holmes' fucking example, and they all have a dungeon room in those big old $2 million mansions.
$2 million. They're not the peasants, Mateo. They've got $50 million mansions.
Yeah.
$2 million mansions.
Their dungeon costs $2 million.
Why don't they just move to a fucking trailer park at that point, $2 million. Fuck out of here.
Thank you for listening to the Whatcast. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, iTunes, and YouTube. Enjoy the podcast. Get yourself a Whatcast t-shirt or a sticker pack. Who was that dude on that one episode?
Well, since it's Stan Lee's thing, I think we need to get down to the age-old question of whether or not the Thing's dork is made out of orange rock like the rest of his body.
Well, I mean, it basically would have to be, right? The only thing that's not rock is his eyeballs. I mean, they say even his internal organs are stone.
So why didn't his eyes make the cut?
I don't know.
Why does he have pussy human eyes? Why can't he have awesome rock eyes? It's bullshit.
They probably couldn't function on a real level. Or maybe they would, and he would just have some cool T-Rex vision or something.
Yeah, he would have Rockman vision. That's what he would have. He would have the vision of rocks. Yeah. And that could be his power. He could see through every rock. Like anywhere where there's a rock, he can see. So he's like, oh, there's guys climbing up Mount Everest. Let me see what they're up to. And he's watching them. That
would definitely be a weird twist to the Thing.
Yeah, it would.
Too weird.
Get on it, Stanley.
Get on it. No, I think Ben Grimm's good the way he is.
The ever-loving blue-eyed Thing.
Yeah, well, early on when we started doing the noms, we would take, a couple of heroes or villains and try to bring their superpowers or abilities to a more realistic light. and apply them to real life situations just to demonstrate how powerful their abilities are. Maybe we can pick a few and talk about that.
And then after thoroughly discussing their powers, we can pick a cryptid to put them up against, like we did with wrestlers.
Oh my goodness, that is a fantastic idea. Superheroes versus cryptids. We will have to have people who are there at Comic-Con sit down and give their pick.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Take audience votes. Who would win, Bigfoot or Sasquatch from Alpha Flight?
Oh.
Who would it be?
Good Lord. And Mike just picked up the prelim battle right there.
We could do Pan against the Goat Man. Even though Pan's from mythology, but...
I think we can include that. That shit's all weird.
Sure.
What else? What else should we talk about while we're there? How about...
Tacos?
I don't know. There's going to be plenty of Deadpool shit going on. There's going to be plenty of taco.
Oh, yeah,
talk,
that's true. We don't need to be tied in with that lot.
No, maybe we'll...
Nothing against Deadpool or anything, but, I don't want to be a bandwagon rider. You know what I'm saying?
I think half our audience said that we are already doing that by being on a panel at a Comic-Con convention.
Nah.
Did we sell out, guys? Is this not a joyous thing?
No, we didn't sell out. This is fucking... We're not getting paid.
Not at all.
We're not changing the style of the show. I mean, shit, we just went off on a shark porn tangent.
Again.
Again, for the 30th time this week.
Some poor listener just started crying instantly and just whispered, "Bring back evil time traveling Barack Obama."
Enough shark fucking. I just want to know what Obama's doing. Well, let me tell you, dear listener.
If anybody knows, it's Mike.
He'll show up when the time is right. He's just sitting there waiting, biding his time for this special moment when he can reach across time and bitch slap Mateo.
Why me?
Because you've been the naysayer all along.
That's right. I'm his natural enemy. He can try to bitch slap me.
No, you're not his. That's young Barry.
Oh yeah, that's true. He's definitely one step up on the Predator table chart for evil time traveling Barack Obama's enemies.
Yeah, Barry O is like he needs to kill Barry. He needs to kill his past. And that's the only way he can thrive is by killing his past.
What a tangle web he weaves.
Yeah. I wonder what would happen if they ever touched. Like, I know he could kill him from afar, but what if they actually touched, like, skin to skin? I wonder what would happen.
What if there's some Spider-Man Doc Ock shit and they just merge and they have to have some type of internal battle to see who remains?
Yeah. Maybe. And then we just get regular President Obama again as a result.
Oh, shit. He's sent back to like 1970 something.
The timeline is corrected.
Oh, shit. Mike, we might have to take that all out.
I said too much.
So with the announcement of all the stuff that's going to come out at the Silicon Valley Comicon, what are you most excited about?
The return of evil time traveling Barack Obama. Of course. What else would I be excited
directed
about?
By fucking...
Everything else is bland by comparison.
Yeah. You're not stoked about the Black Widow movie, dude?
I don't know. Like, I don't really... We've seen the Black Widow, like, how her story ends. Like, I don't know if I'm really all that interested in seeing a prequel to all that. Like, I know Captain Marvel was a prequel, but it was the origin of a character we haven't met yet, so it was okay. But going back in time with Black Widow, just like I think they should have done a Black Widow solo movie between Age of Ultron and Infinity War.
Definitely, that would have been the perfect time to do so.
That would have been, and it would have been interesting. Like, what's she doing between Avengers movies? What type of shenanigans is she getting up to? But now that we know she's dead, do we really care to? I mean, I know some people do care, and I don't mean to shit all over that, but it's not as interesting to me anymore because her character is dead. Like, why does it matter what she did between movies now? Yeah,
besides the Age of Ultron shit, I mean, like, I'll watch a Black Widow movie, I guess. I'm not stoked about it. I really don't care about it. But it's because they really treated her like a background character. Like, she's the chick in the group. She's the looks of the movie. They've treated her that way, besides Age of Ultron. So they really haven't built her up strong enough to maybe for her to support her own film. I just don't see that being... I don't know. I'm not interested in watching a fucking Black Widow movie. I mean, I'll eventually see it, sure, but
yeah, I'll see it. Just I go see all of those movies, so I'll definitely be a sucker and see it. But I don't know. I think if they were gonna go that route, they should have just done like a mini series on the Disney thing that's coming out, and I think that would have been a bit more interesting than. Just a movie in the movie theaters.
mm-hmm.
I think they, for the Disney network thing, that it would add more content and more of an option, and it would give you a familiar character that you've come to know throughout this series of movies, but but it's like I don't know. To me, it just seems more interesting if they were to do it as the network show than the movie.
Yeah, everybody seems to be pretty sick of Loki, and then they announced the Loki series. And I know that...
What? I was not sick of Loki at all. I fucking love Loki.
Same here. Everybody kept saying that, and I have no idea what the fuck they're talking about.
Well, you know what, everybody? Fuck right off. Loki's awesome.
What do you think about Natalie Portman Thor?
I'm into it.
Me too. I can't wait for that.
Yeah, I think that'll be cool. I think we'll see. We'll probably see Thor become unworthy, and then it'll probably be she becomes worthy, and then he's got to become worthy again. And I wonder if they're gonna bring back the second hammer again. Like maybe Jane Foster got the second hammer in the other timeline or something. I don't know.
Beta Ray Bill, maybe even Thunderstrike.
Oh, dude. Beta Ray Bill. And the new movie is called Love and Thunder, so maybe we will get some... I mean, I know Thor is the god of thunder and all, but...
What about Thunderstrike?
No, Thunderstrike can fuck off.
But he kind of replaced Thor. I mean, absorbing into bodies and all that shit. I mean, just we were talking about it earlier.
Yeah, it was basically like, oh shit, we killed Thor. Let's have another character that's Thor. But he's fucking... the most 90s name you could come up with for a Thor character. I want to see it get fucking weird, man. I want Beta Ray Bill. Like, Thor's with the Guardians of the Galaxy now. Make it fucking weird.
Yeah, exactly. I'm all for Beta Ray Bill. That would be the coolest thing they can do with the Thor stuff now.
So cool. I would love that so much.
One thing I've been aching for a return is the Blade series. And they did announce a Blade series.
Yeah, they did.
But with Mahershala Ali playing Blade, which, I mean, holy shit. Him as Copperhead was my favorite on-screen Marvel villain yet.
It was such a shame how, like, really when they killed him off, I just stopped caring about the show.
I had to fight that a little bit, too. It was weird. It was to drive a point home to kind of prop up another villain in this story to show how crazy she was. And he did too good of a job for that character to end that way that soon. I mean, he could have very easily been played by some guy who just portrayed this, this gangster type guy who ran this club.
Right.
But
he brought way too much charisma, and they should have, because of the way that he did that, they should have had him last at least a season. Like they killed him off halfway through the season. It's ridiculous. And then from that point on, I finished the first season, but after he died, it took me so long to get through it just because I didn't care anymore.
Yeah.
What? Who cares?
He was so good. It was such a blow. I totally agree. He did way too good for them to kill him off that quick. And again, Marvel, he did such a good job. Marvel reusing an actor, another actor playing two Marvel characters.
Yeah, who else has now? Chris Evans has.
Mm-hmm.
Has anybody else other than Chris Evans?
I'm not sure. I mean, like, what's her name? Halle Berry gets thrown into that list by playing Catwoman and
Yeah, but
Storm,
that's
but
DC, though.
Yeah, exactly. But there's more examples of that. Probably. I don't know. But it just...
I mean, if you're going that way, you got fucking J.K. Simmons as J. Jonah Jameson and as what's his name? Fucking Jim Gordon.
There you go. That's awesome.
Yeah.
They're also going to do a Shang-Chi show.
Yeah. Oh, man, that could be really cool.
It could.
But then again, I thought Iron Fist could be really cool, and what a fucking disappointment that was.
I see. You know what? I'm glad that you brought that up, because when I heard that they're going to do a Shang-Chi show, that could be really cool, my mind said. But they really, if Iron Fist wasn't going to cut it, if that wasn't cool enough for everybody, I don't think this show has a chance. And now that Iron Fist is gone, and now, they're all gone now. I fucking wish it was around. I would definitely take another season of Iron Fist. I think that has a lot to do more with just the actor, and maybe Iron Fist as a character as a whole. I mean, the guy just does kung fu and shit.
I really don't think it's the character, because Iron Fist he's had a really kind of like a resurgence, I guess, in like the later part of the 2000s when Matt Fraction started writing him, I think. But they did that tournament thing, and I really think a lot of it had to do with the actor, because he just came off as being really whiny the whole time. Like, well, I'm the master of kung fu, and I got the Iron Fist, and therefore I'll punch everybody, because I'm Iron Fist. Did I mention I'm Iron Fist? Like, it has to do with the portrayal of the character and the writing on the show. The show was a show about kung fu that very rarely showed any kung fu. And coming from seeing amazing fight choreography from Daredevil, and then having a show all about the master of fucking the Iron Fist, and we get no interesting fights, that's fucking terrible. Like, you guys failed so hard on that.
I don't know. I think people are too harsh these days. I would have definitely taken more Iron Fist than no Iron Fist. It's just even
no. That didn't it? I would. I mean, I will admit I didn't watch the second season of Iron Fist. I'm going based solely on the first season, and it rubbed me the wrong way. Like, the dude came back to town and he just talks about how he's got the fucking Iron Fist, and that's like all he's talking about is his time spent training with the monks and how he's the Iron Fist and he fought a dragon. And we don't even see him fight a goddamn dragon. We hardly see him fight anybody that's even interesting. Like, there's the fucking one guy from the Hand or whatever that is like his rival, but it just was, they could have done so much more. And I don't think that the character's done. The deal with Netflix was that they couldn't use them for 2 years after their last season. So I could see Iron Fist as a character coming back in the Shang-Chi episodes. Like, I could see them doing a season of just Shang-Chi, like, hey, here's this awesome kung fu guy, and just really focus on the martial arts aspect of it. Play the fights up. They really need to do the strong fight choreography. But in the second season, do the fucking tournament and have Iron Fist show up. Get a new actor who can actually do kung fu. Yeah, and have him be the Iron Fist. I want to see the goddamn mask. Like, have him come in with the mask, just wearing the mask, and we don't even need to see who's under the mask. Have him keep the fucking mask on. It would be awesome.
Yeah. What about their announcement of the Eternals?
I know it's based, or it's supposed to be based on the story from, I think, like 2006 or something. It was, I think Neil Gaiman wrote it, and John Romita Jr. did the artwork on it. But that's what it's supposed to be based on, I guess. And it was a really cool story. It was about the Eternals came back to Earth and just completely forgot who they were. So they took on human lives and changed their names. Like, Mercury changed his name to Mark Curry. And then he's like, I think Mercury was the main character of the story. It's been a while since I've read it, but I think he was the main character, but he was the last one to remember who he was and reawaken his powers. It was pretty cool, though. It could be a good one. But I know a lot of people aren't going to know what it is, but a lot of people didn't know who the Guardians of the Galaxy were either until the movie came out.
Yeah.
So
when they announced that, me and you were both shocked. We're like, whoa, what a reach back.
I was so fucking pumped.
Oh, yeah. It had all the potential to be as amazing as it was.
Yeah, they hit a home run with that one. I don't with Guardians of the Galaxy though, there was a lot more opportunity for humor, and I think that's what made it so endearing was the interplay between the characters and their humor. And I know if they're just because they're basing this movie on a certain storyline doesn't mean they're gonna completely adhere to it. So I guess they could add humor, but it seems like this story is more of a serious type of tone to it. But it's Marvel, so I mean they're still gonna put in their little comedy bits here and there because they're in every movie. But I don't think that it's going to have the same effect as Guardians of the Galaxy did.
No, and I've often complained about that being overused these days. Everything's got some weird, goofy, offbeat, sideways joke. Like I watched a couple clips of the Justice League movie, and after the third time Batman cracked a joke, I turned it off. And it's
dude, it was fucking Justice League movie. How do you fail so hard?
Yeah.
How and the Batman, it's a Superman movie. It's a goddamn mess. At least Wonder Woman was good.
Wonder Woman was fucking amazing. I don't know how you can get Batman and Superman in the Justice League movie so off.
So wrong.
And then
they landed that so perfectly.
Oh man, is that good. That shit was
I
so
didn't
awesome.
see Aquaman. I haven't seen that yet, so I can't comment.
No fucking way. That'd be you'd have to fucking tie me down and pry my eyes open to watch that shit.
Oh, really?
Fuck yeah. I don't care about Aquaman. I can't stand Aquaman. I don't give a fuck.
Oh. My kids said it was really good. I really don't know anything about Aquaman, but I'm really not a huge DC guy.
Growing up, my dad was. So, I mean, I had just as much of that shit around as Marvel. So I know quite a bit about DC and shit like that. I've read a lot of, I grabbed all my Marvel shit and he would grab all his DC shit. So, I mean, it was there for me to read. So I read it. So I'm pretty familiar with DC stuff. I wouldn't say I know a lot. That was a misspeak, I believe. But I know way more about Marvel. And I favor Marvel. But DC had some cool shit. I mean, I don't know. I mean, even I recently found a big old stack of comic books, older comic books. I mean, I'm talking like 70s, 80s comic books. And it's some of it's so hard to swallow, the shit that, just how goofy the shit is. I definitely, there's a lot that doesn't hold up. And I think when you go back, DC's almost holds up a little bit better. But Marvel definitely matured the way that it should have sooner. I mean, I think
I think a lot of that had to do with Stan Lee's writing. Like, it was really good at the time.
Yeah, definitely. That's one thing.
I don't think it ages well.
No.
Because it was very much a product of the time rather than written to be timeless.
Definitely. That's one thing that I thought of as well, is how amazing it was reading it as a kid. I mean, there's one comic book that I've read 100 times that I found, and I was reading it with my daughter, my oldest daughter, and she was just like, okay, chuckling, and it was a little nerdy, and I couldn't argue it. I was like, I told her, give it a chance, read it more, and it just got a little too, I mean, maybe corny is too harsh of a word, but outdated. It just got, corny. It just got a little too corny to where she just had to roll her eyes. I was like, okay, go do something else. But I think DC's older stuff kind of holds up a little bit better. It's just not so much of a cheesy wording and language. I mean, DC's definitely has its fair share of that stuff, but I don't know.
I haven't read any old DC at all. Like the first DC miniseries or storyline that I read was the Sinestro War, which was like 2006 or 7, I think. Yeah.
Mhm.
And it was fucking amazing. I couldn't believe, I'm like, how have I been missing out on this? Because I had just gotten into comics a couple of years before that started. And I was like super diehard Marvel. I probably got 30 issues a month. I was getting like everything at the time. And when the first Civil War started, I got literally every single tie-in to that. So I was just handing over fistfuls of cash getting back into comics. And then I completely ignored DC because I didn't know too much about it other than Batman and Superman. And I always thought Superman was kind of cheesy. So and Batman is so bogged down with continuity, I had no idea where to start. But then I heard about the Sinestro War. So I'm like, well, I got a reprint of the original issue. And then from there, I just grabbed everything. Because it was a main storyline, and then they had a tie-in with the Green Lantern comic, and then a tie-in with the Green Lantern Corps comic. So oh, dude, it was so fucking good. I think it was like 16 issues or something, and just pure awesomeness the entire time. It was great. And that kind of got me, I guess, introduced into the greater DC universe outside of Batman and Superman.
Yeah, I used to read a lot of Justice League, a lot of Flash titles. I used to love Ragman. Do you know who Ragman is?
He's a Batman villain, right?
He was a hero. He was in Gotham. Yeah, he was in Gotham though, and Batman used to beat the piss out of him all the time because Batman's a dick. But he was like he was very Marvel.
Because Batman's a dick.
Yeah, but he was very Marvel. I loved Ragman. He made me think of Moon Knight.
Oh, so he's kind of like that anti-hero type deal.
Yeah. I mean, with the cool. Classic story. I mean, a little bit goofy DC story, but it had a more Marvel feel. It was done with a little bit more maturity. I mean, like, a magic quilt or magic, quilt made from patches of, homeless people that have been wronged in some way or victimized in some way that basically tulpa'd it to be possessed by some spirit and blah, blah, blah. Just normal cheesy comic stuff. Well, not cheesy, but far out and comic booky. But I've always loved Ragman. There's a lot of good characters like that DC had.
Did any of them have murder castles, though?
Try the links in Homie's page. All this and more can be found at www.thewhatcasters.com. Thanks again for listening and have a great week.